Whether you're in North or South Carolina or anywhere else in the world, enter the Cat Cave with myself, Ryan Frick, and Michael Davis to listen to your favorite Carolina Panthers podcast as part of the Keep Pounding Podcast Network, powered by the Fans First Sports Network, where you can find such podcasts as Believe in Panthers, Embrace Debate, and Inside the Vault. Myself, Ryan Frick, alongside Michael Davis. Michael, I had a hard time getting that out, man. I'm a little under the weather, but I'm gonna make it work. How's it going, man?
Dude, it's going pretty good, and there were a lot of P's in there. So as long as your P's didn't pop, that's a broadcasting 101 thing right there. I just gave our audience listening in inside the Cat Cave, but I'm doing well, man. That's more than what I can say for the Panthers preseason opener against the New York Jets, but I'm sure we'll dive right into that.
Yeah, before we get started, I do want to mention, not Panthers related, but I received the news. I say I received the news. We all received the news about former Seahawks and Baltimore Ravens running back Alex Collins, who unfortunately passed away at the age of 28 in a motorcycle accident earlier this week. Very, very sad news. He was only 28 years old. So our thoughts and prayers go out to his family. Michael, do you have any memories of watching Alex Collins, be it in the NFL or in college at Arkansas?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy because it's like he's 28 years old, And so it wasn't long ago he was playing for the Seahawks, more memorably the Seahawks, playing big games for them. And it stinks because he's only 28 years old. It happened on a motorcycle. I feel like, and this is a football podcast, but I feel like I don't know all the details surrounding what happened, but I feel like some drivers don't look out for the motorcyclists on the road. My uncle was a big motorcycle driver. My dad's gotten into it now the last couple years, and just stinks, man, because I don't know if this could have been avoided or whatever. But yeah, my thoughts are with Alex and his family. It's a really tough situation.
28 years old, man. It seems like every year we unfortunately have to deal with something like this. I believe it was last year, the year before it was Dwayne Haskins. So it's unfortunate. I again don't know all the details, but nevertheless a tragedy. Nonetheless, the thoughts and prayers go out to his family and his friends and his former teammates and all that and the other. 28 years old, a lot of life to live. So a really unfortunate situation. Don't know how to transition from there, Michael. So we're just going to get to it. You mentioned we're doing a lot better than the Carolina Panthers after this preseason opener where they lost 27-0 to the New York Jets. Let's start off on offense here. The starters didn't get a lot of play time. I don't believe Miles Sanders played this game. You saw a lot of the starting receivers play. Adam Thielen had a catch. Hayden Hurst had a catch. Bryce Young only played, I believe, 3 series. He was hit 3 times. He was sacked once, but he went 4 for 6 for 21 yards. The other leading stat candidates, Spencer Brown led the team in rushing, 8 carries, 34 yards, and Derek Wright led the team in receiving, 3 catches, 35 yards. But I mentioned that quarterback stuff, man. The quarterbacks were sacked 5 times in this game. Matt Corral came in relief of Bryce Young, sacked 4 times, threw an interception in this game. After the game, the offensive line coach, after the team meeting, pulled the offensive line aside for an offensive line only meeting. Michael, give us your thoughts on how this game transpired and what do you think was said in that offensive line only meeting?
That offensive line only meeting, you hear the saying all the time, I wish I was a fly on the wall. No, I really don't wish I was a fly on the wall. That would have been brutal to listen into. And I'm going to go ahead and say this. I'm very high on the Jets this year. One of the Jets' high points of last year was their defense. Okay? They solved the quarterback issue, going to get Aaron Rodgers. Okay? They just signed Dalvin Cook this week as well.
And they activated Breece Hall, so they got 2 running backs this week.
I mean, they're going all out for that AFC East crown and to compete in that tough conference with the likes of Mahomes and Chiefs, Burrow and the Bengals. Okay. But their strength was the defense. It's still the defense. They went out and got Will Anderson in the first round as well. Will Anderson was wreaking havoc in that backfield. So it's no surprise to me that the Jets' defensive front manhandled Carolina's offensive front like they did, because we've said it on the show, we've said it on this podcast network. The offensive line is the concern here. Now, what I will say, there is a bright spot. I know losing 27-0 in preseason opener is like, no. Okay. Bryce Young felt very composed in that pocket. Even if all the defensive pressure was getting him, he was getting hit. Again, he got hit 3 times. He got sacked once. He kept his composure. He was going through his reads. It felt like Bryce Young belongs here in the NFL. He didn't look rattled like CJ Stroud did in that preseason opener. And we also have to realize this was the Jets' second preseason game as opposed to the Panthers' first preseason game. Jets had those moments against the Browns where they looked ugly. What's going on? But then they worked through those after having that first game under their belt. I feel like Carolina can do the same when they play the Giants this next week.
Yeah, to your point, the question was, can Bryce Young take a hit in an NFL game? Well, he took 3 in this game. And like you said, he didn't look rattled. You would have liked to see him put together a drive that gets into opposing territory, gets into the opposing red zone, gives him a chance to score. Listen, I'm not high on the Jets. I think they have a great defense, sure. But it doesn't justify a 27-0, loss. More importantly to me than the offensive line giving up so much pressure and being that area of concern is the defense. Now, granted, I know the defense played primarily backups for most of this game, but they got, I wouldn't call it torched. Zach Wilson looked fantastic in this game, 123 pass yards with a touchdown, but the defense gave up 258 rushing yards. 258. This is a defense that was top half of the league in most statistical categories last year. And I know it's preseason. And I'm going to preface this by saying that the 0-16 Lions went undefeated in the preseason. The Baltimore Ravens haven't lost a preseason game in 7 years. So I would be remiss if I didn't say that, not that the preseason games don't matter, but we tend to look too much into it. But giving up 258 rushing yards on the ground, no Breece Hall and no Dalvin Cook, does that say more about how the Jets are scheming, trying to go into the season, or more so about the Panthers quite possibly just having some areas of concern on that defense?
Well, I hate when we look at these, and I get it. Like, rush defense is a concern after this game. I don't love when we look at just the box score and we see everything. Like, we're like, oh my gosh, Panthers lost 27-0. They gave up X amount of yards. They gave up X amount of rush pass yards. They gave up X amount of touchdowns, because a lot of this was in the second half. Okay. The Jets scored 14 points in the fourth quarter. How many of those guys on either side of the ball are going to be playing significant minutes this regular season, barring some huge injury? None of them. Like, I mean, that's the difficult thing when it looks like compiling all of these stats. I can tell you the players who look good. I can tell you the players who didn't look so good. That's more concerning about their spot on a 53-man roster. But I really hope we don't read too much into the preseason game and the box score.
I think I'm looking forward more to seeing what they can do in their second game, what they can learn from, what they can put together. The Giants are a good football team, but I think that coming off this game, hopefully a fire is lit underneath somebody to stop somebody from the Giants, as well as to get the offense rolling. Because, again, if you look at the receiving targets that went to Carolina, I'm looking at the box score on the score right now. Again, Derek Wright led your receiving, led the team in receiving in the game. You had Javon Wims right beneath him, Tommy Tremble, C.J. Saunders, Adam Thielen had a catch in this game, DJ Chark had a catch in this game. A lot of guys, again, long after they pulled Bryce Young, caught passes. I guess my concern is what wide receiver is going to step up and be the guy that takes over the game from a receiver standpoint. Now that I'm on the subject of receivers, I've got a concern about a guy that we've been talking about for a while to figure out whether or not he's going to take that big next step. Terrace Marshall was carted off the practice field this week. Apparently a tweak, some sort of back tweak. But if you're tweaking something, listen, I'm a hefty guy. Sometimes you just move the wrong way, you pull a muscle in your back, and it's painful. It can put you down. But I have never hurt my back so much that I couldn't walk. So considering that they had to cart him off, what are your concerns about Terrace Marshall and what this could potentially be? And is this, if this turns out to be serious, is there a concern that Marshall isn't brought back next season?
Well, I want to go ahead and say I don't want to speculate on the injury. I'm not a doctor. I'm just a fan of the game. So I'm going to look at this from a football point of view. It's not good that he was carted off the field with a back injury in preseason. Now, granted, it might be to prevent any further injury, but I'm also looking at the depth at this position for the Carolina Panthers, which is what we've talked about extensively throughout the summer, because you have Adam Thielen, you have Mingo, who's making some big plays as a rookie receiver that I called, by the way. You have DJ Chark, who's impressed me. You have Laviska Shenault. You have Demir Bird, Shi Smith. You have a couple guys like Derek Wright and Javon Wims, who weren't even a thought in our podcast or probably throughout the organization. And they were two of the better receivers in the Jets game, particularly Derek Wright, who on 3 targets caught 3 catches for 35 yards, made a couple big plays for the Panthers, even though none of them resulted in any points. There is depth at this position now. This is a new organization where they are more focused on winning games and being excellent at the highest level that we haven't seen in this organization in years. The unfortunate part about the NFL is it's a business, and the greatest ability is availability. So with any injury, particularly sustained in the preseason, you don't want those happening, because then you kind of get put in the back burner. You almost become an afterthought in some cases as other guys step up and say, hey, I deserve a spot on this roster. Not only that, I deserve a spot on the depth chart, high, playing in meaningful minutes in the regular season. And I went ahead and said before this injury, probably on one of our earlier episodes, Terrace Marshall's good. Yeah. But could he be the odd man out in this receiving core? I mean, and if you're injured, there's a bigger possibility of that happening.
So does Terrace Marshall have to get significant play time in the rest of the preseason? Let's say hypothetically he pulled a muscle. He's going to be fine. It's just a pain tolerance thing. And he'll be good to go to play on Friday, Saturday, whenever it is the game is this weekend. Or worst case scenario, they want to rest him till the regular season. What's your best case, worst case scenario for Terrace Marshall at this point?
Best case scenario, he's healthy. Looking at the depth chart, I mean, he's already probably the 4th or 5th receiver in this lineup. I mean, it's not looking good anyways.
Who you got above him? I'm curious who you have above Terrace Marshall.
Thielen, Chark, and Mingo.
Oh, so you got Chark up there. That's interesting. I know you said he's impressed you, but that's interesting because I've been beating the drum of DJ Chark and Laviska Shenault the entire offseason.
Okay.
And all of a sudden now you've got him ahead of a guy like Terrace Marshall and other guys.
Well, I never said Shenault was above him. Let's be fair.
Okay. Well, DJ Chark. Yeah.
has shown he has a connection with rookie quarterback Bryce Young. And for a rookie quarterback, if you already have that connection established, then that's obviously going to put you higher on the depth chart. So I got Marshall at a 4 right now. And then I probably have Chenault at 5. I don't know if I want Demir Bird or Shi Smith. Shi Smith also had an injury. He was able to return in that Jets game. Who knows where he sees himself, but yeah, it's worst case scenario. You have guys like Chenault or you guys have Demir Bird outplay you, and they're like, oh, we don't need Terrace Marshall. Maybe we can trade him for a draft pick for next year, or we could trade him and get a piece on our offensive line instead.
I just, you tried to beat that chest about how you were right about Mingo, and I just wanted to beat.
I am, by the way.
I just wanted to beat my chest about how I was onto something about DJ Chark potentially being a big time producer in this offense. So
I will beat my chest about being right about Mingo, and everybody's going to thank me about mid-year. They're going to be like, "Thank you, Michael, for being right about Jonathan Mingo." I'm sure Frank Wright listened to this podcast and was like, "Okay, I'll trust this broadcasting graduate from Appalachian State University. Now play Cameron Peoples. Come on, man."
Did Mingo get any snaps in the Jets game? I honestly, I don't remember.
Yeah, Jonathan Mingo played a few snaps, didn't do anything particularly in the preseason game. And honestly, how could you? Because of the offensive line getting to Bryce Young. But Jonathan Mingo is a pretty clear 2 or 3 on this team. He started the game for the Panthers.
Well, listen, if you look at the matchup for week 2 in preseason, you get the New York Giants, who lost to the Detroit Lions in week 1.
I think you and I are both happy about that.
Yeah, listen, the Lion. I've been telling people for years that the Lions are on the upswing, and they continue to be so. The Giants, you didn't see. Why can't I say his name? Who's their starting quarterback? And he just got a big money extension. Who's the quarterback for the New York Giants?
Daniel Jones.
Daniel Jones. Thank you. I'm telling you, that's how off I'm feeling, Michael. Daniel Jones did not play.
That's more how irrelevant Daniel Jones is. Well, if Saquon Barkley wasn't there, Daniel Jones would be irrelevant. So
I'm looking at the stat lines in their opening weekend loss to the Lions. Tommy DeVito got a lot of play time in this game. No relation to Danny, from my understanding. I would imagine he's a little taller than Danny. Tyrod Taylor, I believe, got the start, went 3 for 4 for 7 yards. DeVito went 155 yards with a touchdown and interception, and he was sacked 5 times. So that gives you some hope that maybe the Giants' offensive line is going to be struggling like the Panthers did in week 1. Leading rusher, just Sean Corbin. Obviously, Saquon Barkley probably not going to play in this preseason. Cole Beasley, I did not realize was playing for the Giants. A lot of different pass catchers catching passes for the Giants. Jalen Hyatt is a guy, if you're watching the Panthers game this weekend, Jalen Hyatt is a guy that I am watching to see what he can produce for the Giants. If he can do some stuff against the secondary for the Carolina Panthers. Jalen Hyatt, a very talented wide receiver out of the University of Tennessee that lit up every scoreboard that he played against, except for the University of South Carolina. So having said that, we are headed into week 2 of the preseason. I've already made a comment that a team like the 0-16 Detroit Lions went undefeated in the preseason. So the idea is not to look too much into the scoreboard for the preseason. But I know we might be beating a dead horse at this point, but both of these teams coming off a loss. What's the biggest area of concern headed into the week 2 preseason game against the Giants this weekend?
Yeah,
What do you want to see?
Well, I want to see 3 things. Okay, one of them we've beat the dead horse about was the offensive line needs to play better. I've said it once. I've said it a billion times. A game is won or lost in the trenches. Okay, especially having your rookie quarterback, you want to give him more reps. But if your offensive line is playing like garbage, then, you're not going to win many games. Now, they do have a benefit. Okay. The Jets' defensive front is incredible. Okay. And I think everybody's going to realize that this season. The Giants' defensive front, mid. Okay. At least in that preseason opener, again, we're not looking too much into the box score or whatever. But I think it's interesting to note that the Giants gave up 5 sacks that game. The Lions only gave up 1 sack. The Lions only gave up 1 sack with Nate Sudfeld and Adrian Martinez playing him at the quarterback position. So what I'm expecting is this isn't a good Giants defensive front so far. Put them against this Carolina Panthers offensive line and see if they can hold their own against the Giants D line. If they can't, I think, 1 problem, 2 problem, the common denominator would be the Panthers O-line, and that'd be a concern. The second thing I need to see is Matt Corral. We were on the show last week. If you missed it, go on to Spotify and listen on the Keep Pound Podcast Network. We talked about how crucial this preseason was for Matt Corral to show that he belonged in the NFL. And after this past week, hey, Bryce Young was under pressure, but he showed poise. Matt Corral honestly didn't look like he belonged in the NFL after that preseason game. It was really, really rough to watch. He didn't seem confident in himself. It was pretty bad. And so Matt Corral needs a really big bounce back game. And then this defense, who's going to step up? Like, I need somebody to step up, particularly on that defensive line, to show that, hey, I belong in this rotation. Because again, games won or lost in the trenches.
So you talk about Matt Corral. I guess my question I want to pose to you is, how much of Bryce Young should we expect to see in this game, and are we going to get any view of Andy Dalton in the preseason?
I feel like we should get like at least a couple series, either this game or in the next one, from Andy Dalton. Make sure he can like still play in that part, because if Bryce gets hurt, Andy Dalton's going to be the guy. Bryce Young, I would love to see Bryce play. If the offensive line can hold up, I feel like that's the big like conditional aspect of this. I'd love to see Bryce Young play almost a full quarter with Thielen, with Mingo, because if you think about it, this isn't a proven team. This is a really good team on paper that they've pretty much all assembled this offseason. They haven't had real meaningful minutes to play with each other. Get all of these guys on the team to play. Maybe you leave Miles Sanders off. That's fine. Okay.
That was my next question.
But
why not play Miles Sanders at least a couple series in the preseason? Like there's something to be said about the lack of conditioning, in a sense. Like, you're a pro wrestling guy. There's a difference between being in shape and being in ring shape. There's a difference between being in shape and well conditioned in the NFL. I mean, you watch prize fighters spar so they can get used to getting hit in the stomach, getting hit in the face. There is something to be said about being in game shape. And I think, especially considering that they don't go so hard in the preseason camp anymore, that there's something to be said that I feel like Miles Sanders should get some playtime in the preseason. You would disagree?
The only way I'd push back on that is running backs get hurt a lot. And
everybody gets hurt.
But their mileage is so much shorter. That's why these guys don't get long-term contracts, especially after their rookie deals. Miles Sanders got the most lucrative deal in the offseason for running backs.
Until Dalvin Cook, maybe. But
no, I mean, Dalvin Cook only got a year.
Yeah,
for like $8 million.
It was $8 million. Miles Sanders got what, 2 for 10 or 3 for 10 or something like that.
I want to look up those numbers real quick.
It's the point remains is that, like, I'm not saying that Miles Sanders needs to play all 4 quarters. He needs to play every offensive snap.
4-year, $25.4 million, by the way.
So $6 million, a little over $6 million a year, which is less than the annual salary that Dalvin Cook is getting.
But long term, 4 years.
I mean, I
You're
get it.
You're investing 4 years into a guy. You don't want him getting hurt in the preseason.
But you can get hurt in week 1. That's my point. It doesn't matter when they get hurt. You got to let them get out there and play. And I'm not out here saying that they need to run Miles Sanders into the ground before the season starts. But you need to get Miles Sanders some reps. You need to get guys like Mingo and you need to get Thielen on the field. You need to get, especially coming off an injury in the offseason, you need to get Hayden Hurst on the field against live competition. You need to have the wherewithal to play your starters, at least for a very short period of time, while also maintaining that I wouldn't call it illusion, that maintaining that sort of precaution when it comes to injury. Because again, you don't want him to get hurt, but saying that you don't want a guy to play in the preseason because you don't want to get hurt is moot if he goes in week 1 and he tears his ACL in the first series of the season.
That's a freak accident, though, and that's him playing in a meaningful game week 1 rather than we just lost our starting running back in our preseason week 2 game.
I know we're talking about practice, but practice is meaningful, and if you can't get that again. It's all about that condition, that NFL conditioning, getting hit, being able to take those hits and do it for a season long. You got to at least get him a feel. You don't want him to get hit in the ribs in week 1 and all of a sudden like he's not recovering from it for a few weeks.
Now, I say this. I think we're agreeing in a way. And I'm going to try to explain it and see if I'm missing the mark here.
Okay.
I feel like we believe this team, now that they've been, all compiled this offseason and haven't played together in the NFL regular season yet, they need to play together in the preseason. Yeah. Okay. I'm saying I need pretty much a quarter out Bryce Young, a quarter out Jonathan Mingo, a quarter out DJ Chark. Miles Sanders, at the most, I would put maybe 4 carries on him in a series. I mean, I think if you're going to protect anybody on this offense, Miles Sanders, because he is a running back, he's going to be taking much of your load this year. And Adam Thielen, just because of the age that he's got now.
I think, listen, I can agree and disagree with you. I think Miles Sanders, 4 carries isn't enough. I think maybe he gets 2 series in. When it comes to Adam Thielen, I'm with you. Like you want to keep him fresh. He hasn't been blowing the brakes off of people over the last couple of years in Minnesota, especially when you've got Justin Jefferson out there. I need more than a quarter out of Bryce Young. If the offensive line is holding up and giving him time to make plays and get the ball down the field, I think you let Bryce Young play a half. If they come out giving up pressure like they did in the first week against the Jets, and he's getting hit 3 times in 3 series, okay, maybe a quarter. Like you've got to get him acclimated to it, because if you throw him in there week 1, and you can say he can be composed and this, that, and the other, but if you throw him in there at week 1 and he's just getting beat up the entire game in week 1 of the regular season, he won't know how to recover. And so I again, if he's getting beat up early in this preseason game, pull him. If the offensive line is doing their job, let him continue to get those reps and let Bryce Young build some confidence headed into the regular season. Can you agree with that?
Yeah. So real quick, are you saying that Miles Sanders has the potential to get beat up week 1?
If the offensive line plays the way it did against the Jets, yes.
Against the Atlanta Falcons.
Against anybody.
Yeah.
If the offensive line struggles the way they did against the Jets, against anybody in the NFL, you're not going to get the running game going. Bryce Young is going to get beat up on. I'm not saying they're going to get beat up by the Falcons, and it's not a way to make you look right about the Falcons. It's a matter of saying that the Panthers, if they can't get their offensive line working right, then they've got some big concerns headed into the regular season. Michael, we're up against it. Why don't you tell the fans where they can find you?
Yeah, so I feel like I'm on everything right now. I have Alpaca and Michael Davis going live now at 3 o'clock on Fridays. We moved the time to fit our high school football in on Tobacco Road Sports Radio. I have a wrestling podcast Wednesday afternoons, Tobacco Road Sports Radio. My Instagram's on the video feed. for Out of Pocket and Drop the Mic. Started a Dallas Cowboys podcast last week called the Stars and Spikes podcast with Esteban Serrano. He's a reporter out in the San Antonio area. And then also go follow my broadcasting page, Boom Broadcasting, on Facebook, because as more stuff keeps coming onto my plate, I'm just ready to share it all with you guys. But Bully Ryan Frick, where can they find you, my guy?
Michael's out here doing everything. I'm just out here doing this and my other show. You can catch my other podcast, Tap Outs and Touchdowns, at Tap Outs and TDs on Twitter, or X, whatever you want to call it now. Facebook.com/Tap Outs and Touchdowns. You can follow the YouTube channel as well. Mondays/Tuesdays, we do a wrestling show with my co-host PJ Steven. We've been doing a lot of throwback episodes recently. And then every week, Banker Bill and I have been going live Wednesday nights around 8:00 Eastern time, talking all things football. We've had some fantasy football talk in the last couple of weeks. So we're going to continue that on this week. This has been fun, Michael. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate you taking your busy time away from everything else that you have going on. I feel like I'm sort of taking it easy. Meanwhile, you've got all this stuff going on behind the scenes. And for all the listeners, all the audience, thank you for joining us. Until next week, exit the Cat Cave. We'll listen to more content by Michael Davis and Ryan Frick on Tobacco Road Sports Radio's YouTube channel, and more Carolina-centric podcasts on the Keep Pounding Podcast Network, powered by the Fans First Sports Network. For Michael Davis, it's your guy, Ryan Frick. We'll see you next week on the Cat Cave.